Void Mage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps, Void Mage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Void Mage Gamer's channel. Hello guys, welcome back to another one of my Commander list videos. I'm going to go back to a little series of mine that I did about a year ago. Going over reasonable reprints I think is so important because in Commander we have different needs. Cards that get reprinted in these master sets, they don't have the specific aim for Commander, and we haven't really had anything like that in a master set, and there is still a ton of cards that haven't been reprinted or been reprinted that often. Just going over color by color, there are actually quite a few surprising options that they could have reprinted in master sets or Commander products that they just haven't done yet, and I'm almost certain that some of these have crossed their mind. Commander is kind of niche, but not really. I think a lot of people play it by now, so you're going to see some staples that haven't been reprinted. You're actually going to see some newer cards. The first one is actually the newest. It's Alhamerit's Archive from Magic Origins. This is an amazing Commander card, but it's one of those cards that it's very specific towards the life gain strategy, and it also allows you to draw more cards, but it's almost always going to be paired up with commanders like Aloro, Trostani, obvious life gain options. It's always a card that I end up needing, but I rarely ever get because it is kind of expensive now. It's one of those cards that I think they could easily just throw into a Commander product and not really worry about it that much. It's an all-star in a lot of these life gain decks as well. Control decks want that extra card draw. You want to get a cushion with the life gain too. Plus another card that also needs a reprint badly is Rock's Faithmender. I think this one could also be thrown into a Commander product. But primarily, Alhamerit's Archive, I see it everywhere whenever I go to build a deck and I need suggestions. I always see this card, but I rarely ever get it. And then we have Idyllic Tutor. This card is crazy expensive. It's almost $30 and there's really no justification for it. Significantly worse than Enlightened Tutor. It got reprinted in Eternal Masters, so we don't really need to worry about that. This is a sorcery speed, 3 mana. Yeah, it's just worse in every way. It only searches up enchantments, and you do have to reveal it. There's just no reason why this card should be that expensive, all the way from Morningtide. Does see a lot of Commander play because there's a lot of enchantment decks, a lot of that enchantment theme floating around the format. Just kind of crazy that this is almost $30 and it really only sees play in Commander. And then we have a really cool card, a card that I absolutely hope they reprint sometime soon, especially for Commander, because there's really no other place you're going to see this in. Council's Judgement, all the way from the original Conspiracy set. It's one of those cards that has the Will of the Council mechanic, which is really meant for multiplayer. It does see some Legacy play, which is a good reason why it is kind of expensive. It's almost a $20 card, because in Legacy it's a 2-for-1, and they can't touch any of your stuff anyway. But in Commander it's perfect. Everybody gets a target, and your stuff is still protected. Exiling removal for non-land permanents is pretty powerful. And when you can be in a game where one player is way out ahead, they have all these permanents, indestructible, they have multiple things to deal with, you need to get around a Lightning Greaves, and then you need to get around a creature. So for just 3 mana in a multiplayer game, this is one of the craziest cards that you can have. Super effective removal. Should be a Commander product reprint easily because of the Will of the Council being so specific for multiplayer. I really don't see them putting this anywhere else unless they feel like making another Conspiracy set, so it is kind of limited towards the multiplayer arena. And then we have a card that I'm actually incredibly surprised hasn't been reprinted all the way back from Ice Age, Mystic Remora. It's not a crazy expensive card, which is yet another surprising thing about it. It's only around $3. It does see play in competitive EDH, also sees play in regular EDH casual. It's just a good card that sits on the field and allows you to draw more cards, because most of the time people are not going to pay that tax just to prevent you from drawing. In many cases it's significantly worse than Rhystic Study, but it is just for 1 blue mana. Even if you do have to pay the cumulative upkeep, it's still worth it. It's one of those things that I feel might be too competitive for a core set, but it's perfect for a Commander reprint or a master set reprint, or really just any reprint kind of set. Standard is kind of pushing it, so they might stay away from that. And then following that, we have a card that is an absolute staple in the format, Phyrexian Metamorph. This is arguably the best clone, or at least one of them, because it's an artifact creature and the synergies with artifacts in the format is insane. Enabling combo commanders like Sharum the Hegemon. There's some pretty disgusting things that you can do with her. Just the fact that it's super affordable to play. It's only that 3 mana and 2 life if you're desperate for mana. And let's say you can't find any blue. But clones are really powerful. In a singleton format, you're not always guaranteed to have the best stuff on your board, but you could also find it from your opponents. You have at least 3 other opponents, I would imagine, having decent creatures, being able to copy them. This card hasn't seen a reprint at all from New Phyrexia, and it's definitely overdue for one. And then we have a card that's not really that expensive. It's a common, also got a reprint in Commander 2013, but that was a while ago. Viscera Seer, for 1 mana in black, you get one of the best staples for black decks in the format. There's so many decks that have some synergy with sacrificing creatures, whether it's Marin, whether it's Prosh, Gave Guru of Spores. There's so many decks that just want this kind of sack outlet on a creature that can also sacrifice itself, because sacrificing isn't just to synergize with your other mechanics, your other creatures. It's also a great way to avoid exiling removal. That way you can at least have your creatures in your graveyard, and you want a sack outlet that can at least do something for free. You don't have to pay any mana to sacrifice a creature. That can be a problem with a lot of cards. And what you do get for sacrificing the creature is a scry 1, which isn't super powerful. I mean, we do have things like Carrion Feeder, which it does get bigger, gets more counters on it. It can't block though. I would honestly prefer this, because at least with a scry you could set up your next turn. But it's just one of those cards that it sees play all over the place in Commander. It didn't get a reprint in Commander 2017, which is kind of crazy, because it could easily fit into that vampire deck and also that wizard deck. I think the strategies that they introduced in Commander 2017 would be perfect for this card, and they kind of missed the mark by not including it in those decks. And then we have everyone's favorite god, Purphoros, God of the Forge. You could easily include just about any of the other gods, but I feel like with Purphoros, he's easily one of the most powerful. Creatures entering the battlefield is such a disgusting thing to synergize with, dealing 2 damage to each opponent. When you have commanders like Krenko, Mob Boss, Prosh, anything that can get multiple creature ETBs, it's going to be dealing a ton of damage, or just any deck where you can reliably recast creatures, have them enter the battlefield again, dealing a ton of damage over the course of the game. This kind of strategy is disgusting. The activated ability is next to useless. Nobody ever uses it, but it does seem like we should have more and more reprints for these gods in the future. And I think in Commander products, they're pretty decent opportunities to put them in there. I mean, we did see Iroas get reprinted in Commander 2016, so I definitely don't think Theros is too soon to reprint. And then we have a card that I'm honestly surprised hasn't been reprinted in a master set, because I could have swore that they reprinted all of the Mana Tutors. They didn't reprint Worldly Tutor. Hasn't been reprinted since 6th edition, which is kind of odd because they did reprint the other Mana Tutors in Eternal Masters. They even reprinted Gamble, but they left this one alone for whatever reason, and it's close to a $20 card. So with all the green creature tutors that we have already in the format, they even reprinted Eladamri's Call recently. So seeing as there's a ton of creature decks in the format, a lot of decks just want to have more creature tutors. This isn't really one of the better ones in my opinion. I don't find myself playing it a lot, but I do know that there's a lot of decks that run creatures, and even though it doesn't get a creature straight out onto the battlefield, it could get a problem solver onto the top of your deck. And it also is one of the cards from Mirage that didn't get reprinted. So there's that. And then we have probably the most expensive card on this whole list here, Oracle of Moldea. A commander staple without a doubt. There's so many land strategies, landfall. You have the new Tatiova commander, you have Lord Windgrace, you have the Gitrog monster, you have Omnath Locus of Rage. So many decks that love extra land drops. Oracle of Moldea had to have crossed their mind when they were reprinting cards for the master sets. Hasn't seen a reprint from Zendikar, and it's kind of shocking, because while it is a very good valuable card, it's even good for control. You get to play lands off the top of your deck, you get to go through your deck a little bit quicker that way, get to your reliable answers, get extra land drops, more mana to work with. It's just a decent card for a lot of decks, not necessarily landfall strategies, but being a staple that it is in the format, the fact that it has eluded being reprinted for this long is kind of alarming, and they should definitely get on that. And the last card we have here is Dueling Grounds. This one is probably the least well known on the list, but I think cards like these should be reprinted. They don't see that much play, but I think what they do is very reminiscent of other cards that we already have in the format. Like we have Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. She's very similar to what Dueling Grounds does. Very good for this kind of strategy in Celestia. If you want to go with a Voltron deck, it slows your opponents down if they want to go wide with many creatures in attack. They can only do it with one creature, and they can only really block with one creature. And cards like these that just alter the board state see play primarily in Commander. So it would make sense for a card like this to get a reprint sometime soon, but I could understand if not everybody's on board with a card like this getting reprinted if they don't exactly know what it is. Doesn't see a ton of play in the format, but it's one of those things that could be an all-star in a pre-constructed deck. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this 10 cards that needed reprints for Commander list. It's not all about cost. It's not all about what desperately needs to be reprinted because it's $40 or $50. Oracle of Moldea is getting out of hand, but you also have things like Viscera Seer that are still cheap, but they haven't seen a lot of reprints. You know, if it's been 6 or 7 years and we haven't seen a reprint for a Commander staple, that's another thing to be a little concerned about. But most of these are good cards. They do see a ton of play in the format. And one of the biggest problems that people have with pre-constructed decks, the commander products, is the lack of actual value that they're putting into the deck. Ultimately, if you are reprinting any of these, you're going to lower the price a little bit, but the goal should be putting playable cards into the decks. And usually playable cards are going to see some sort of value. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know what you think about these cards. If you also think they should be reprinted, and feel free to leave suggestions in the comments section below. Void here signing off. You all have a wonderful day. See you next video.